Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne, and today with my guest, Christa Jones. Christa is a professional organizer and declutter coach from Alberta, Canada. She helps busy, overwhelmed, and discouraged people reclaim control of their homes, schedules, and restore their peace and sanity and find their confidence. She and her team physically help families declutter, simplify, and organize their lives so they can make room for what really matters. We all need a little bit of that in our lives, don't we? So Christa, thank you for joining me today. I'm extra excited, I think I just said this to you, about talking to you today because you're a little bit out of the norm of what we usually talk about, but it totally fits into some of the things that are our core themes. So before we get started and we dig into your expertise, can you share a little bit about how you got here and the path that led you to this work?
Sure. Thanks, Marianne. Thanks for having me here. I'm so excited to be on. And I started doing this about 3.5 years ago. I'd been thinking about, starting a side hustle outside of my job. And I wanted to do like coaching or just helping people and changing lives, really. But I didn't know what to do until my next door neighbor was unloading boxes from her car into her garage. And I asked her why, what she was doing. And her dad was moving from his condo into long-term care, unfortunately. And so she needed to sell the condo. And I told her if she needed any help going through all the boxes and sorting through things so that we could take him some items to kind of decide who gets what, and what he wanted to do with his stuff. She thought that was a great idea. And I went to my mom the next day and I offered to help my neighbor with this. And she's like, oh, you could totally help people with their clutter. Because I've just, always been that way, right? Declutter and donate and organize. And I could be a clutter coach. And so I Googled clutter coach, and up came the Professional Organizers of Canada website. And I realized I could make, anywhere from $50 to $100 an hour doing it. And so I posted on Facebook, a business page real quick, and posted all over mommy groups and business buy and sell groups. And I had a client within 5 minutes. So yeah.
There's so much about that just kind of blows my mind. I need to pause and dig in just a tiny bit because we continue to see patterns of the thing that we need to lean into. It's always there. You just said like your mom was not shocked. She was like, oh yeah, you could do that because you had signs all your life, right? And then the other thing is we often dismiss these whispers that the universe puts there in front of us. Like things just happen, I think, for a reason. I know people have their own opinion on that, but I also think that there isn't a coincidence. Like something like that happened because it was supposed to lead you to something else and you took the leap. So pretty cool story. I love that.
Yeah. And it's crazy because I've just recently thought about how it would have been like 6 or 7 years prior to that, I had been selling a product or products that help people organize with a multi-level marketing company. I'm not going to mention it, but I remember thinking I could actually promote going in and helping them use these items efficiently to make their spaces more organized, not just sell them the product, but offer the service along with it. And I remember thinking that and kind of like leaning into it a little bit. But then I pulled back. I was like, no, I'm too busy. My kids are too young. Like, this isn't going to work. Nobody's going to do this. Nobody's going to hire me to like help them organize their crap. But yeah, 6 years later.
So crazy, right? My story is similar because when you look back, the saying, right? Hindsight, you can see all the patterns and all the messages and all the possibilities where it was being served up to you and you just never took, for whatever reason. There's lots of good reasons and maybe we're not ready and maybe that's why. But it's so interesting to look at that. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing that. Let's dig in a little bit. When you and I first talked, we talked about trying to figure out where your expertise best fit, whether it was while I was doing these episodes around the holidays or if it was better at the beginning of the year. And I think we both came to the conclusion that it could fit in either segment. And the reason being is certainly with the holidays, we have all the stress and all the anxiety and feelings of overwhelm sometimes. And there's a couple of core areas where that happens that you can speak on. And I think the first that I want to dig into is our homes, our space, our, when we get to this age, often we're the ones now hosting the events. And the idea of having people over, whether that be for the day or for sleeping with us, coming to stay with us during the holidays, it's often a little intimidating because is the house clean enough? Is there a mess? Are things too cluttered? Whatever the situation is. So give us some advice around how we can sort of minimize that stress when we start thinking about those things.
Yeah. And a great example is just a client we worked with recently over the last couple days here. And she had connected with us a year ago for an assessment when they moved in. But she didn't book us until a year later because she has family coming for the holidays and she needed the basement ready for them to stay in. And she was just feeling super stressed about them seeing it not unpacked yet after a year. And so after 3 days of me and another team member working with her, we had got it under control for her and moved the bed and everything, just the whole space was ready for her family to come. And she was just so relieved. And I think that's where we have to remember that our exterior environment affects our mental and emotional health. And that in turn affects our physical health, right? So when you're looking around your space and going, this is stressing me out, it's causing me anxiety, I'm really worried about my family coming and seeing this, and how am I going to take care of this all by myself? That's really affecting your mental emotional state. And so to take control of the external environment, you're also doing yourself that self-care part. And so my main tip with that is to just recognize how that external is affecting your internal state. And then what is the actual problem and the actual issues that need to get dealt with. And I always tell people it's good to take a notepad and write everything down that you see and assess it all. And if you have to take pictures and then walk away and sit down on the couch and look through your pictures instead of standing there in the space, pictures kind of give us that detachment. Or we can look at the picture and be like, oh yeah, that's out of place and that's out of place. And it's less overwhelming looking at it on your phone in sections rather than looking at the whole room. And so that would be my first tip, is to take a couple pictures and then leave the space, take your notepad, sit down and assess the photos and write it down as if you were a professional organizer and that was not your space and that was not your stuff. And what would you do if that was your friend's place and you were going to help them get ready for their family in the holidays, and kind of detach emotionally a bit from that so you can take a more logical and step-by-step approach. Then you may not feel so emotionally overwhelmed.
I like that advice because I do think people that have this problem, they can get overwhelmed very easily, especially if you have a lot to do, a lot to look at. So thinking about that aspect, what if I'm a person that my entire house is just upside down, or I'm kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say a hoarder, but if you borderline, keep everything and you really want to thin things out, how do you take that first step? What do you advise people on taking that first step to just dig in? Because I know with me, with work, with the big project, it's just take it one task at a time, and eventually get to the finish line. But I think that's hard sometimes.
Oh, it's so hard when you're looking at everything that needs to be done and you just are I don't have the time or the energy to do this, right? But it depends where you're at kind of on that order scale. But this is for a good tip that most people can do, is to grab a recycling bag and a garbage bag. And it doesn't have to be a big one. It could just even be a small shopping bag. You're like, this is going to be garbage. And just kind of walk around one area of your house, say it's a spare room that you need to get cleaned up for your guests, right? And just look for the category of trash and then look for the category of recycling and just put things in the bags, because we need to build a declutter muscle. We can't just go in and be I'm going to open up this box of things that are all sentimental and we're going to deal with that. No, you're going to deal with trash and you're going to deal with recycling. And then once that's out in the bin, make it leave your house, physically put it in the bin. Then you can come back to the room and say, okay, now I want to look for things that are not sentimental, They're non-emotional. And sometimes it's really good to start with bigger items, right? And so if you can see, oh, that lamp, that's broken. And I've been meaning to fix that. I'm never going to fix that. So let's take that out, and put it on the curb and say, put a sign on it, free, broken, but free, right? Because some people will take that stuff. And if you can get the big stuff out of the room, then that's going to give you some more space. You're going to feel like, oh, I'm actually making some progress, and it's going to empower you and give you some confidence that you can then tackle some of those harder things. But you have to start with stuff that is not like emotionally, you're not emotionally attached to. Just start with the easier things.
I was going to ask about the emotional attachment, because I think a lot of people save things because it reminds them, right? It was passed down to them. And let's use that example, especially around the holidays, right? We have all these heirlooms that are passed down to us. Maybe we have this dish set that was used by our great great grandmother on the holidays, whatever. I think sometimes we get stuck in this, that we should do it. We should use it. We should keep it. We don't want to offend anybody. But the reality is we never want to really use it. So what do you suggest there? And what do you see in that space?
Yeah, it's so funny, that saying of stop shoulding all over yourself. And that's really true with keeping and holding on to things you're not going to use and you don't really like, or it's just not serving you anymore. In that case, it depends on the person, right? And it depends on who gave you that item. And we try to work through a few different things, whether it's, okay, is this item something that is the only thing that you have from that person? And, and they were so special to you, and this thing reminds you of them, and it has memories that you just don't have anything else in your life that they've given you or that reminds you of them in that way. In that case, it's probably really important to keep that. And if you can make space for that, that's great. If there's multiple things in your home that are reminding you of the same person, then we kind of ask, what is the most important item that really gives you the great memories and has really special meaning about that person? Let's keep that. And then let's look at these other things. Okay, now, on a scale, how important are these items? And you can take pictures of those things and let those items go to someone who is actually going to use them and benefit from them and enjoy them, and still have the photo of the item that reminds you of the person, because it's the memory, like you said, the memory that's attached to looking at that item. Be like, I remember my grandma and we did this with her, but you don't actually have to own the physical thing and touch the physical thing. You just have to see the thing, and you can do that with a picture. And so that's an approach that we take with a lot of our clients, and it helps them a lot.
I like that one. I wouldn't have thought of that. I actually see this with my grown children. Like, one of them needs the physical thing for that memory and the other one doesn't. And I'm like that. I don't. I mean, I have the memory, thankfully. Maybe someday I won't, but I do right now. But I think that idea of taking a picture is a great one, because you can store an awful lot of pictures in one album or digitally even. And it's so much smaller from a space perspective than the actual thing if you're not using the thing. That's a really, really great idea. So one thing I'd like to just let folks know, because it sort of surprised me when we chatted, I think I asked you something like how long does it take? How big of a investment, and I don't mean money-wise, time-wise, to get with you guys or someone like you guys and actually make a dent on what you're trying to tackle? And I guess I thought it was going to be bigger than what it was, because, and I'll let you speak to this, but I think you can make a significant change in a very quick amount of time, and that might surprise people. Mm-hmm. So talk to me a little bit about what your normal engagements look like, just so that people have sort of a frame of reference. Even if they're not doing it with you, they kind of know that they could do something like this.
Totally. I'll use my very first session as an example, because it surprised me. I went in to help her with the storage room, and I just said, okay, well, we'll start with 4 hours and see, we can get it done. I walked in there and I saw all of these boxes and all this different, all these different categories. And I went, well, let's just take the big boxes off the shelves and look through them, because then we'll know how much space they're going to free up if we can get rid of some of the stuff. Like 75% of the boxes I picked up were empty, Marianne. And it was using up valuable storage space. And I said, well, why are you keeping these boxes? She's like, well, when we move, I need to put these items in their boxes. And I was like, okay, so are there any other places we could get boxes from if we needed boxes? Oh, yeah. So it was just really one of those like moments I had this massive realization, like people are holding on to empty boxes.
Yeah.
And they are doing it for the what if I move, or when I move, then I will, the intention of using them. But here she is like needing that valuable storage space in those shelves for other things in her home. And they're cluttering up her living area when it should be in storage. And these empty boxes are taking up that valuable space for when in the future I need them. And I'm thinking, but you're living in a situation now that is affecting your mental, emotional health and not serving your family. And you're holding on to these things for when I might, if maybe, and it just does not serve you in your current moment. So yeah, it was really powerful. In just 4 hours, we were able to do the whole storage room. We brought things from around the house and put things in the storage room where it belonged. And after 4 hours, she said to me, oh, you know what? We don't really need to buy a bigger house and move. We just need less stuff. And that's why I called my mom after, and I was like, this is going to change lives. Like people are making big life decisions based on 4 hours of cleaning a storage room. And it's true. In 4 to 6 hours, when we work with our clients, they go from being completely stressed out, overwhelmed, and crying because they're ashamed to show us their home, to being totally relieved, hugging us, jumping, like they're just so excited and proud of themselves. And they're ready to have family come over and show off their spaces. And they're like, yeah, you can use the before and afters. Sure. Post them everywhere. And they're just like totally switched, like totally different person just 6 hours later. And it's really incredible. It's so amazing. But you can do that and have that feeling with just an hour or even 30 minutes of working on your office drawer or a kitchen drawer. Like you can feel proud and empowered and confident and like just so excited just by doing a small space in like 30 minutes, really.
Two things. An analogy with what you just said, it made me think of how often do we hold on to things that we aren't using actively, but we might use, whether that be stuff, which is the name of your game mostly, or relationships, or old personas that we carry in our heads of who we are, who we were. There's so much of that in our lives of just keeping stuff on a shelf that we may never use and actually letting it weigh us down physically and emotionally. And we can just ditch it. We can just ditch it. And if we really needed it again, we can get it again, right? I mean, we can build new relationships. We can recreate ourselves. We can go buy more stuff or ask around and get stuff borrowed. I mean, we don't need to hold on to it just in case. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the second thing, I had an experience not that long ago, like a year ago, for the first time in a gazillion years, really 25, I separated from a job that I was in forever. And I worked like crazy, crazy hours for all of that time. And I found myself with some time on my hands. And one of the very first things I did was tackle my bathroom drawers and medicine cabinet. And can I just tell you, I went to the dollar store and I bought just to the dollar store, guys, cheap. Yeah. I went and bought all these little baskets and all this stuff. You would be proud of me. I like thinned everything out and cleaned it, put it all in this like perfect little setup. And I was like, wow, my drawers never, like I can remember moving in and they didn't look that good. But to your point, it felt so good to just really get that organized and feel like I had accomplished that. And truly my house is pretty neat, but still it wasn't like I wanted it to look like that Pinterest picture of all in the little, organized sections. It was fun.
That's awesome. Yeah. And it's so true that there's just so many benefits for your mental and emotional health and your feelings when you take control of space and you let go of things. And it's really amazing with our clients when they're starting to let go of physical items, that they do start to let go of those things. One of our clients that he called us and was like, my wife needs help letting go of things. I'm trying to declutter a bit. And I just feel like we need like a middleman. And I'm like, yes, that will work very well. So we came in and he was just in awe of all the things she was letting go of when working with us rather than him. And he was like, afterwards, that was amazing. But as she was letting go of things, she started saying to me, I feel like I need to do this in other parts of my life. Like I feel like I need to let go of some people and some things. And I'm like, ooh, boy, here we go. And so the next session we came back like a week later, she started telling us about how there were some unhealthy family relationships and how she had actually reached out to them and been putting up boundaries and saying what wasn't going to fly for her anymore. And that was like one of the highlight pivotal moments of my career with this, is just seeing her make those massive implementations of boundaries and space and, in her relationships. And so that just, it manifests in other ways when you start letting go of the physical stuff.
Yeah. I think when you're ready to do the work, I'll just say the work,
Yeah.
it shows up in lots of different connected ways, lots of different connected places. It's not just one area ever that bogs us down. But I think you gave her permission and you gave her encouragement. I can imagine the dynamic different when trying to do it with our husband. Yeah, when we're both married, we know there's a different dynamic there. But working with some strangers, that can be gentle, encouraging, and yet firm enough to make her ask some hard questions. Yeah. That's like a perfect combination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good job. So let's switch gears for a minute from physical space and let's talk about our commitments. So again, back to the holidays. It's a time where demand is high, time is even less available than normal, but it's similar in that we have to make some choices and we have to like organize really well. So what advice do you give in that space because I know you help people also with calendars and commitments and scheduling and all that stuff. So what does that look like?
Yeah, it's one of those things that I really realized over the 2 years of COVID slowdown and where things weren't happening and we weren't doing group activities or sports or gatherings and that kind of commitment wasn't happening. And it was like this, all of a sudden, all this space was made. And it was like, now what do I do? And of course, it was traumatic and we were freaking out. But at the same time, people were like, whoa, I actually was so busy and never home and constantly on the go. And that's when my house was a disaster because I didn't have time or bandwidth to deal with it because my schedule was so jammed and I was so overcommitted, to be honest, right? And then we just stopped everything. And we got a real reality check of like how overcommitted we were and what are the real priorities, right? And so with the holidays, it's really important to like set out your schedule and block out those times for self-care and family time and downtime so that you can recharge and rest and give yourself enough space in your calendar, just like space in your home. We need that to stay mentally and emotionally and physically well. And it's fun to commit and it's fun to go to the activities and it's fun to host the parties and it's fun to do the charity galas and it's fun to do all the baking. But when you do everything without spacing it out and giving yourself time in between to relax and rest, then it doesn't stay so fun. It's not enjoyable anymore. It's stressful and overwhelming and you're exhausted and then you're snappy and you're not having a great holiday season anymore. And then at the end of it, you're totally fried, totally burnt out. You get sick. It just takes a long time to recover. And so, yeah, there has to be that white space in your schedule. And planning it in advance it's key. It's critical.
So I feel like I may have lived one or two of those seasons at one point in my life. So what do you say though to people that it's hard to say no? People that you have to push, you have to be okay pushing back or setting some limits. Like, so what do you say to people when that's the response, right? Yeah, but I can't say no to Aunt Judy or Uncle Billy Bob or whatever it is.
And that's the thing is it feels good to say yes and it feels good to help and it feels good to be a part of it until it doesn't feel good anymore. And so that's where we really need to do the whole assessment thing again is take a picture of your calendar. How many days, how many hours do you have? How many events do you have? Like list it all out and be like, realistically, I can't do all of this stuff without becoming a hot mess. And so we really need to assess and evaluate what is priority. Let's put it at the top. And then all this other stuff, we're just going to have to be completely blunt and just be like, I literally have zero space in my calendar for this. And the way you do that and be honest is block off self-care day, rest day, recover day, clean the house day. Like just block off the day as recharge day, because you need to charge that battery in order to give out to those other people. You can't run on an empty battery.
I think that's a great tip because the thing you alluded to, you said it, but just to pull it out, You said, so you're being honest. So, right. So I think if I have a day off Saturday and somebody says, can you come to this? You might think, oh, gosh, I got nothing going on Saturday. I guess I probably could go. But really, you have a lot going on because you have 25 people coming Sunday. So you need to go shopping. You need to clean your house. You need to whatever, but you don't have those as like calendar items. So in theory, you've got nothing going on, but the reality is you really do.
That's the way our brain works, right? Is like our day off, but is a day off really a day off? No, you have things you need to do. And so if you put it in the calendar as this is the day to plan for tomorrow's party, this is the day to prepare. And even if that means getting more rest and making sure that you've, relaxed and done some things for yourself, that is just as important as doing things for other people. And we struggle with that so much, especially as women, is putting ourselves first and saying, I am just as important, if not more important than this commitment to someone else, than this other person. And it's not selfish, because if you're not filled and you're not like ready, then you're not going to be able to do as good of a job for them as you want to. So it all is interconnected, and you need to take care of yourself.
I love that.
And put that on your calendar and make it a priority.
Yeah, I think that's a key point, right? Put it on your calendar, because I do think we often gravitate towards, if there's time, I'll go do X, I'll get my massage, I'll get a manicure, I'll just rest and read a book, whatever it is for you. I think we often just say, if there's time, and you don't really make time for that.
No, we don't. And that's where, like, even just I went to my massage therapist on Monday, and he's like, it's been 3 months since you've seen me. And I went, oh my God, are you serious? Like, I used to be seeing him once or twice a month when I was working on site jobs, and I've gone 3 months without seeing him. No wonder I feel like poop, And so I went to the assistant at the front after the session, and I booked my next 3. They're in my calendar now. It's scheduled. It's going to force me to work my days around that. And you just have to schedule it in and prioritize it, because otherwise there will never be time.
I really like that advice. I'm really bad about that too. So when I go, I like to go for massages occasionally, but I never make an appointment, because I always say, well, I'm not sure when I'll really have time. And I do eventually find time. But to your point, if I would schedule them, I tell myself I can't, but if I were to schedule them, I'd make my schedule work around those appointments.
It's just prioritizing, right? And we need to prioritize ourselves.
So tell me, now that you've been doing this for a handful of years, what surprises you the most?
Oh man. I think the biggest surprise for me is how much we can get done in like a day with somebody when they're just like, they're fully on board, they're committed, they've waited like a long time to do this, they know they need to do this, and they've put their money where their mouth is, and they've, they're ready to work with you. And I look at them, I'm like, you're awesome, and if I had to go to my house and do this all by myself, like that would be really hard. And so I can relate, right? But they bust their butt to like make decisions and get rid of things. And they're just like super full speed, amazing. And then we finish the day and we can't believe how much we got done. Like all of us, like the organizer and the client. It's just so surprising when you have a set amount of time. You've committed, your energy and your money, and you have someone there to help you, to keep you on task and focused and motivated. How much can get done in 6 hours? Like it is absolutely mind blowing. Some of the spaces that we do and how much stuff leaves the house in that amount of time. It surprises me every single time. It sounds broad, but
you made me think of, well, I think you hit on that. You're focused and it's your key objective for the day. And yes, you're doing it as a group. But I think about when I just house cleaning, regular house cleaning, how it can either take for me a long time, like a whole day, or it can take a couple hours. And one of the keys to that is if I'm really focused and I'm like, boom, 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 this is my list of stuff and I'm going to bang it out, it's all good. If I stop to take 3 phone calls, listen to, 12 podcasts, stop at my computer on the way by the office every time, suddenly the day is gone. But I think that's what's happening. You're going in with people and they're very focused and they have a little push and it helps. But I think we could probably think about that ourselves even when we're alone. don't be distracted. Just pick what we want to do and stay on task and like get it done.
Yeah, it's exhausting to task switch. Like it's the switching tasks that is the most energy draining. And so when you stay on task and you follow your list and you just do your routine or the process, it becomes like the habit, right? And so it takes less energy because you're not jumping back and forth between things and wondering, what do I do next? So yeah, definitely to have that game plan and that list, have that timer set and know when I finish this, then I can work on, the computer and the calls and whatever, and just turn all that stuff off and focus, and you'll be less distracted and less exhausted at the end of it.
Yeah. So I want to switch gears for a minute. I know this isn't the core topic of what we were going to talk about, but you've branched out and you're coaching people now on businesses too, like starting a business and scaling and learning how to do what you love and make money at it, which is exactly what you did. So obviously you're a step ahead and you're sharing some of that. So what I want to ask is, because, this group of women that I work with and that are, in my community and that will probably listen to this podcast, a lot of them are at a point where they're either starting to think about they're in that second phase of their life. What do I want to do with my life? Is there something different that I didn't get to do that I want to do? Yeah. And I know there's a few of them at least that are dabbling on venturing into their own businesses. So my question to you is, if you had one piece of advice for anybody kind of thinking about it, what would that advice be?
Test it. Test your market. Just try it, because you just never know. I did not think that I'd have a client in 5 minutes. And put it out there. I've been in business for over 20 years, since I was basically 12. My dad got me started in business, and all it was, you can't sell unless you tell. And nobody will know that you have something they can pay you for unless you put it out there and let them know. And it's the scariest thing, because you're afraid of rejection, afraid of failure, afraid no one's going to want it, afraid maybe it will be a success. And then, oh my God, what do I do with my life that it actually works out? There's all those fears. But no one will know unless you tell them. So put it out there and test the market and see if you get the response. I mean, my response was so positive and so quick. And not everybody has that same experience. Sometimes you have to go to 200 people before you find the one. But once they pay you for that expertise, then okay, there's value here, and people will trade money for that expertise. And then it just gives you more confidence and validation to keep going. But it is very intimidating to put it out there and to sell. I coach a lot of women on just sales and pushing through that fear to put yourself out there and talk about yourself and talk about what you're good at and tell people that you can help them and what you have to offer. It is uncomfortable. We're just not used to that. And so the more you do it, the easier it gets.
It's a weird thing, because we do have something to offer, and yet we're sort of embarrassed to say that. It's just a weird thing. I think you got to get used to it, I guess.
Yeah.
With time, I guess people get used to it.
Exactly. And also just making sure that you're not undervaluing yourself. In the beginning, I priced myself at a point where I thought, it was kind of in the middle, but it was sort of low. It was low compared to what other women in the industry were charging based on what I saw on their website. And I set it at that rate because I'm new, I'm starting out. I don't know if people will pay this. And within 2 weeks, I had sold a $1,500, almost $2,000 package, and so I was definitely underpricing myself, and I was underpriced for about a year and a half. And then when I raised my rates, it was by $25. That's a big jump. And so if I would have understood the value of the transformation and the results that these people investing in me were getting, it's not just about my time. It was about the life transforming effect that this time was having. And it's so much more valuable than we think most of the time. So if you're not sure what to charge, talk to somebody who you look at their price and you go, that's really high. Talk to that person and ask why they charge that. And then you'll be like, oh yeah, okay, makes sense. I'll charge that too.
That's good advice. But I also think the transformation is good to bring us back to the other topics, because I do think that you may not even realize what transformation you're going to go through when you take a step like this and just declutter or get that stress off of you and you won't be thinking about it anymore. It's just going to free up so much space in your house and in your head.
Yeah. A lot of people are just like, I just want to clean up this mess and make it look good for my aunt and uncle when they come to visit. And then they do that with us in 6 hours. I'm like, oh my God, I feel like a different person. We need to do the rest of the house because it's transformed them as a person. So I did not think that would happen getting into this.
No, I mean, but that's a good surprise, right? When you go into something and you find out it's so much bigger and so much better. I mean, you were offering a service to help them, but you really helped them in a different way. So that's fantastic. So before we close, I obviously will put all your contact information and things like that on the show notes so people can check you out and check out the services that you guys offer. I know that we talked about the fact that you're obviously in one area. Not everybody listening will be in that area, but I think the good news and one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you is you're so authentic and you felt passionate about just letting people know what this can do for them, whether it's with you or somebody else or themselves. So I really appreciate that.
Yep.
But I wanted to give you an opportunity. Is there anything we didn't touch on that you want to share before we close out?
No, that was great. I think I'll just use that as a segue to let people know that we do offer virtual. So over Zoom, we can do decluttering and decluttering and organizing coaching, or we can do a DIY plan for you to follow step by step on your own as if we were in your home, but on paper, walking you through it. And then I do have a Facebook community called the Uncluttered Confident Woman, where you can come in and see tips and ask for advice. And we do run a spring declutter and organize challenge in there. And so there are ways that you can get my help, even if you're not located in Alberta. But if you want someone to come in and work with you in person, just Google professional organizers near me, find someone with a lot of 5-star reviews and reach out to them for a free assessment, because you can show them around and see if you like them and you vibe. The hardest part is asking for help. And then from there, you just feel a relief. Like once you book the session, you're like, oh my God, someone is coming to help me. I feel so much better. So I really encourage people, if they can't do it themselves or they don't want to do it themselves, to reach out to somebody that, is 5-star rated, and ask for help.
I love the idea of the challenge in your Facebook community too, because to me in my head, that's probably a small step somebody could take just to kind of get their feet wet and dabble in that a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then they might get excited and want to do more.
Yeah. My community, they accomplish all the spaces and post the before and afters. And I'm like, you did it.
I love that. So we'll encourage people to check that out. We'll put all your information in the show notes. Thanks so much for chatting with me today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Message in the Middle with Marianne. If you enjoyed the podcast, please take a minute to share it and write a review, as it helps bring new listeners to our audience. If you'd like to keep the conversation going between episodes, please join us at Facebook group Message in the Middle with Marianne.